Senator, welcome.
Good to be with you, Ezra.
Senator, this is the Reid-McConnell deal, not just the McConnell deal. It's being built by Democrats and Republicans alike. So help me out here. What do the Democrats actually see in it?
I think about the only thing one can see in it that's positive is averting the catastrophe that would come to the country if we did not extend the debt limit. As you know, if we failed to meet our obligations, if we failed to pay our bills, interest rates would spike, markets would crash, the economy would flounder. We would be in a very serious situation going forward. So about the only good thing it does is avert that kind of catastrophe.
But then what is when, and I agree with you completely on the size and seriousness of the catastrophe of not raising the debt ceiling. But as Democrats look forward to future negotiations and even to the potential 12-man committee or 12 legislator committee that would end up deciding maybe the next bargain, don't they worry that Republicans will just pocket these spending cuts and then in the next round hold the line on taxes once again? And so the ultimate deal is not going to be 3-to-1 spending cuts as the Obama administration originally wanted, but something much, much, much more tilted towards spending cuts and much, much deeper spending cuts?
Yeah, that could well be the case. Look, I don't think it's attractive at all. My own view is to have a debt crisis and not do anything significant about the debt. And $1.5 trillion sounds like a lot of money, but you and I know, Ezra, that it does not change the trajectory that we are currently on. We are headed for a debt 250% of the gross domestic product of the country if we fail to take substantial action to deal with the debt threat. It also doesn't take any action to lift a weak economy. We are going through a recovery, but it is a weak recovery. One of the things that's needed, almost every bipartisan commission has concluded, is in the short term some additional lift, spending on infrastructure, for example, which I would strongly favor, and then pivot and deal with the debt threat.
Well, this is a big frustration of mine that we're actually going to get into a bit later in the show, but people look at jobs and the deficit as somehow being alien to one another, somehow being in tension, when it seems to me it is very easy to imagine a deal where the fact that you have a certain amount of economic lift in the beginning, as you say, perhaps a large infrastructure package, would help you get larger concessions on the long-term deficit from liberals. And meanwhile, if the job spending actually works, you would have a much easier time dealing with the deficit spending later, or the deficit problem later. So it seems like it should be a win-win, and yet not only can you not seem to get anybody to consider it in Washington, but it hasn't been something Democrats have really made core to their negotiations. You haven't heard them say, look, if you want to do a big deficit deal, that's fine, but there's no way we're going to move forward on that if we're not helping out the jobless now. And that's actually something that's confused me. Why hasn't the party drawn a line on that?
Because of the rigidity of the other side. Look, what has been clear is that Republicans are dealing in a dream world with respect to where this debt is headed. As I say, every bipartisan commission that's taken this problem on has come back with a balanced approach, one that includes additional revenue, usually by tax reform, broadening the base, some cases actually lowering tax rates to help make the country more competitive, but also spending cuts and entitlement reform, a full comprehensive package on the range of $4 trillion. Everyone knows that's about what's required to change the trajectory the country is on. And our friends on the other side are, especially in the House of Representatives, in deep denial. They don't want to go there. They don't want to touch revenue because they are terrified of Grover Norquist and what he threatens to do with them in terms of having primary opponents. And so rationality is out the window, and what we're left with is extreme, rigid ideology, which has never been a very good way to get problems solved in this town.
And there's been, you mentioned the bipartisan commissions, there's been a bit of a Groundhog Day effect happening. And the quick history, for those who don't know, is you and your colleague, Senator Gregg, sponsored a bill to create a bipartisan debt commission that would have had congressional privilege a couple of years back. When it came up, some Republicans who were for it flipped sides and filibustered it to death. Then the president created his own bipartisan commission, which didn't have much congressional privilege. That wasn't able to quite get to the supermajority it needed, but it did come out with a majority for the Simpson-Bowles recommendations. Those were never taken up. So why should anybody believe that to do yet another 12-person commission is going to have any different result?
I don't know. I served, as you've indicated, on the previous commission. I'm proud of its work. That, too, was not without controversy, but it was comprehensive. It was a $4 trillion package. I've been part of the group of 6. We have a package that's about $4 trillion that also is balanced, has all of the key elements. So, you know, you had Domenici-Rivlin, that's another bipartisan commission, former Budget Committee chairman, Republican Pete Domenici was a co-chair. They had a balanced plan, again, on the range of $4 trillion. So, look, I think we know what needs to be done in this town. The problem is getting it done with the extraordinary ideological rigidity in the House of Representatives. And for those who say, well, any tax increase will crater the economy, you know, the last time I heard that was the last time we balanced the budget. Back in the 90s under Clinton, 93, we had a major package. Not a single Republican voted for it. It did most of the heavy lifting that led to balanced budgets, actually paying down debt. And interestingly enough, it didn't crater the economy. Instead, we had the longest uninterrupted economic growth in our nation's history and created 24 million jobs. So for those who say deficit reduction, including revenue, means you crater the economy, that's not the historic record.
Senator Kent Conrad of North Dakota, thank you so much for joining me today.
You bet.